All right, we're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order at 10:03. May we please have a roll call?
When I call your jurisdiction, please state your name. San Mateo County, Atherton, Belmont,
Should be another. San Mateo County.
Regular.
Give us just 1 second.
Atherton,
Brisbane,
Colleen Mack.
Burlingame,
Wilson.
Menlo Park, Millbrae, Portola Valley,
Jeff Elfs,
and San Bruno.
Marty Medina.
We have a quorum.
Okay, great. Should accept the agenda, please,
No,
and approve the consent items. Moved by Medina and seconded by,
Elfs.
do we have anyone participating remotely? Do we need a roll call vote?
No.
Okay, I don't think so. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we will move on to public comment. If anyone in the room would like to make a comment on something not on the agenda, this is the time. Have we had any public comments submitted, Brianna?
Not online.
Not online. Okay. Is there anyone in the room that has any? Okay. So we have no public comment. We'll move on to, I'm sorry, I was a little ahead of myself there. Regular agenda, chair report. So the only thing I have to report is I spent 2 days up in Sacramento. I was actually doing some lobbying work for Filoli, but in every single meeting, I was very pleased to say that Filoli, when they started talking with the legislature about sustainability, they always mentioned they were an early adopter of PCE and were an Eco 100 and you know how important the CCAs were to them. Which I was very grateful for, and we got a very positive response back from most legislatures and of the legislature representatives, legislative representatives, and a few that you know were sort of, I wouldn't say on the fence, but just didn't know as much about CCAs, didn't have them in their district, or you know weren't representing any. So I think it was just a very nice. And that's really all kind of I had to report out. Sean? Or we'll do both our public comment together.
Okay, so to the chair, I'm gonna defer my chair report to the board meeting. There's a number of good news items, none of them time sensitive, and we have a packed agenda today.
Okay,
So
great.
you'll get my full report.
So does anyone have any public comment on chair or CEO report? See none, hearing none, we'll close, move on to item 4, recommend board of directors fiscal year our budget. So we have Nick.
Great. Hello, everyone. Okay. Before I move on. So just to set the table, it's in the memo, so I apologize for repeating, but a version of this budget was shared with the Audit and Finance Committee about a month ago. I think there's only one overlap now. So Donna, you heard it. I think you were somewhere in Europe. So hopefully this is somewhat of a fresh. Since we presented the budget, we've been refining our numbers as is normal process. We've made some slight tweaks here and there, some up, some down. The biggest change we've made is we've spent about 3 weeks, Roy's team, updating our load forecast. As for those of you who've been tracking our results year to date, we've been consistently under budget for load. And so we wanted to take that recent information and make sure we were doing our best to forecast load going forward. Obviously, it's just a forecast, could be off, but that was probably the most significant change we've made in the last month. It's had the impact of reducing revenue. So load came down. We were forecasting about 5%, which seemed high. Now we're forecasting about, we were forecasting about 8%. Now we're forecasting about 5%. So revenue came down, but so did cost of energy, because obviously we're not having to purchase as much. Net through all of it, I don't want you to think we haven't done a lot of work. There's not a huge impact to sort of the bottom line from all these ups and downs. So what's being presented today is largely the same or similar to what we presented to the Finance Committee about a month ago. Finance Committee didn't have any significant comments or suggested changes. And so we're looking for the Executive Committee today to recommend to the board approval of the budget, which I'll go into in a second. So just wanted to set the stage. I'll also remind everyone that we have a new rate setting process, cost of service, or sort of a hybrid cost of service. And so as a result, the budget is probably even, it's always important, but it's even maybe more important because we're using the costs to set our rates going forward. I'll also say that usually when in my old jobs, and most of you are familiar with sort of income statements, you would start with revenues and maybe work your way down the income statement. Because it's a little bit unique here, sort of utility rate making, cost of service, I'm going to start with costs. So we're going to go through what are all the inputs of our total cost for the agency, and then we'll use that total cost to set revenue and rate. And then Leslie will go into a lot more detail on what we're doing with rates. So it's a little different than what sort of I'd normally present an income statement, but that's the way I think the best way to explain what's going on. I have basically a page in here on each of the main categories of costs. The largest, as we all know, is cost of energy. And so I'll walk through what we're seeing here. The format for each page is similar. So just to get you grounded at the top, and I apologize, numbers are somewhat small. I tried to make them big. We've listed out 2023 actual numbers, so it's in the past, but a good data point. What we're looking to land on for 2024. We still have 2 months to go in the fiscal year. Well, technically we have 1 month, but this forecast assumes 10 months of actuals and 2 months of forecast. So hopefully it's close to that number. And then what we're budgeting here in the 2025 forecast. And a reminder, when we say 2025, that's for the next 12 months from basically July to June. It ends in 2025. And on the right, we've listed out the dollar increase, so $96 million, and then the percentage, which I'll go into what's driving that on each page. And the format's similar. So first on the cost of energy, I don't think this will be a big surprise for anyone, although when you see the numbers on the page, it is pretty striking. But we are forecasting almost a 30% increase in cost of energy prices. Most of that increase is driven by the price of RECs, the price of GHG-free products, and the price of capacity, resource adequacy. And I've circled on the bottom right the percentage increase we're seeing year over year. Again, I don't think a huge surprise. RECs and GH-free, 70% and 450% increase. And then capacity costs, 46% increase. So that's the large majority of what's driving the increase. As I mentioned, we are seeing about 5% increase in load. So some of the increase in cost is the increased cost of what we call energy to service that load. So you can see on the bottom left, we've sort of laid out the inputs of the $96 million increase. So $34 million for capacity, that's the cost of RA. Energy is just the increased load and some increased pricing, 9%. So it's not insignificant, but nothing compared to the other increases. We're also layering in some contingency. This is a new process improvement we added last year, before I joined, where we're looking to layer in about a 10% contingency each year, given the variability on a lot of these products. And so we feel pretty comfortable at about 7% contingency, given where we are and what we've purchased already. So that's about $29 million of contingency. And that's an increase over this year, about 23 million. And then, as I mentioned, we're seeing about 5% increase in load. That's split somewhat equally, 2% due to sort of organic normalization of weather. This past year, we saw a mild summer, so that drove down load this year. And then we are seeing, which is great news, some increased commercial load, which I think you guys are aware of, Googles of the world and Caltrain, et cetera. So that's driving. It's a big number on the page, but I think we've been talking about it over various board meetings and exec committee meetings over the last almost year. Any questions? I think Roy's on the phone, so hopefully if he has any detailed questions, he can help me answer. But any questions before we move on to the next page? This is obviously by far the largest driver of our total cost profile and our increase in costs. Okay, great. Our second largest category is programs. And here again, we're seeing a pretty significant, a very significant increase of about 13 million, almost double what we're forecasting to come in for this current year. But I think this is a good news situation. I think in the past, we've historically underspent on programs. It's been hard to almost give money away or spend this money. And I think for the first time, for the latter part of this year, as well as what we're hoping for next year, we're seeing the demand is actually greater than supply. And so we're actually limited on what we can spend in this area. Again, I don't think these dollar amounts will be a huge surprise for people. What's driving the increase is somewhat the surplus funds committee allocation there, member agency grants, as well as school building electrification. We're also rolling out new programs that I know Raphael's really excited about, government building electrification, turnkey building electrification, and then the Resi plus storage program. And then finally, we've got a lot of existing programs that are just continuing to ramp up. Home upgrade is probably the most significant increase. I've layered a table there at the bottom. If those of you are interested on sort of what's making up the $27 million in budget. Obviously, buildings is almost more than half of the budget, about 15 million. That includes the building electrifications, the turnkey building electrification, home upgrades, appliances. We're also continuing to spend on our EV Ready program. That's mostly incentives there. And then the member agency grants. That's not the total amount that we've allocated. I think we've allocated something like 12 million, but we're expecting about 3 million to go out in the next fiscal year. If it's more, great. Any questions on programs? For the first time, we are seeing some revenues come in programs, which we're counting on, so to speak. We're also seeing our balance sheet in this area continue to grow. And so at the top, I've listed about $5 million of revenue that we've included in the budget that we're expected to come in this year. The first one is CPUC revenues. Most of that is the Flex Market program. We've also, which I know we've talked about, the Menlo Park grant. And then we've got some money coming back to us that wasn't spent. So that totals about 5 million of revenue that's coming in the door, which is great. We are also spending a lot of money on sort of what we call capital programs. So these next bucket of dollars won't show up on the income statement, but this relates to mostly our GovPEV program, which everyone's aware of. So that's the $21 million there. That's mostly for round 2, about 20 sites. There's some left over of round 1 in there, but that's driving the capital program. And then all these capital programs ideally will replenish capital over time, over 20 years or so. And so they don't equal in year 1, but you can see we're expecting about $1.5–2 million to come in sort of as a replenishment of capital from these programs, the PPA revenue, the on-bill finance revenue coming in from these loan programs. Any questions? Great. Please interrupt me. I don't mean to be a monologue. Next category is compensation. So this is obviously our staffing costs. Again, we're seeing a pretty significant increase here, and that's driven by 2 factors. The first one is just a continued growth in headcount. We saw or will see this year 14 additional headcount, 3 of which were vacancies, and the rest were approved by the board last year. So that's gone from 39 to 53 headcount. And then next year, we're proposing another 8 incremental headcount. 4 of those relate to the contact center, which was presented to the board in those last month. So hopefully, which was approved. And then the other 4 are throughout the company. They're in marketing, energy and admin/HR. And that's the additional 8 that we're proposing to bring our total staffing to about 61 at the end of next year. We are also, as always, there's some salary increase included in these numbers. We're proposing about a 5% merit plus COLA. And then plus we hired Mercer, which I think you're aware of, about a year, maybe 6 months ago or so, to do some benchmarking. We saw we were under benchmark in a few areas, mostly on the lower salaried employees, but also in areas such as energy. And so we're making those adjustments for a total of about 8%. Any questions?
Nick, on this.
Yep.
So where are you making adjustments to? Median or top? top quartile or?
50%.
50%,
Median.
yeah.
Okay, so we're making adjustments to median. And how often do you plan to, once we get them adjusted, we'll just move to like a CPI?
This is meant to be a
Or-
one-time adjustment. I
Okay.
think we paid Mercer for this study. I don't think there's a need to do it every year, but
Yeah.
probably makes good
Every
business
3
practice
years.
every 3 years or so to
3 to 5.
retest the market, make
Mhm.
sure we're offering a competitive salary.
That's great. Is everyone okay with that?
And so this is worth stopping, because that's a big number, and I do also want to say thank you for bringing that up. So we're making these market adjustments, it's a one-time jump. We've also been super clear with staff that we're not looking to grow at the pace we have in the last 2 years. It's been necessary and great coming out of the COVID time and really ramping up programs and, you know, backfilling some of the slower workflows that we were having, but we're not looking to do this kind of growth. The one place I want to flag that we will be watching is how it goes with the turnkey program. Customer demand will drive some of that, and we just don't have a sense yet of what that ramp up will look like. So I want to have a little flexibility there to come back to you if we need to add staff in the programs area, but otherwise, we're not looking for any more significant increases.
Just on that, Nick, I do also want to say that I really appreciate that you focused on the lower earning employees in our organization. It is so hard to live in San Mateo County, and I want to make sure, I know we're remote first, but still being able to, you know, compensate people to, you know, try to live here is really great.
Most of our staff is in the Bay Area. That's, how many, I think there were about 20 of them, right? Market comp increases
Yeah,
across.
about 17 or so,
CHC.
but around there.
So it's a big number this year, we know that, and it's not looking to have that kind of increase in the future.
And do we have people making, if you divide their hours out by average, making below the county's stated living wage?
I don't believe so.
No, that was a couple of the adjustments we made to get
At
above
least
that
bring it up to
threshold,
the
yeah,
county's
exactly.
living wage. I think that's, I hope everybody, that's totally appropriate, like, we should not be paying people below the county's stated living wage.
100%.
So in our city, and I think most of our cities, we all post salary schedules, so do we have that same transparency to post the salaries on our website?
I'm gonna be honest with you, we can look at it. So we do post some of that. We post, I think most of our salaries on a, there's a name of a website, it's like Transparent California. Something like that. We could, if you don't mind, rather than respond to that right
Sure.
away, let us look at that. Some of the challenge we have sometimes is that some people think of us as a government agency like city. And some people think of us like private sector. And the truth of the matter is we thread the needle between both. So we're having to remain competitive in highly competitive areas. For example, the power resources team. The benchmarks we were low, so we brought most of them up. And it's just a tough competitive, so it's not an apples to apples, and that's my hesitation.
Sure.
But
And did you benchmark against only CCAs or did you
No.
look at the sector?
we looked at private sector, government, and CCAs.
Mhm.
They did well, sector.
No problem.
Is that fair, Marty?
No, that's fair.
Okay. Me, Director Medina.
So this is basically all the other costs that roll up the income statement. The dollar amounts don't obviously compare to cost of energy and programs, but this is in sort of operating cost category. You can see pretty significant increase or in line with some of the other categories down the line. Data manager is, those are Calpine fees, so thankfully somewhat flat. PG&E fees somewhat flat. But then we are seeing or forecasting a pretty significant increase in consultants and professional service. A lot of that is in power resources. Obviously, the dollar amounts being spent there are significant, and we want to make sure we're maximizing our dollars, being efficient as possible. So we've got a bunch of program spend in there. additional legal costs to support Power Resources. That's a big increase. And then communication, I think we've talked to this committee before. We're looking to spend some money on our website and marketing. We've hired an external consultant to help us there, and some of the spend will be incurred in the next fiscal year. And then G&A, general and administrative, a lot of that, or 1.4 million of the 1.6 million is software. And a lot of that software, again, is in the Power Resources area. I mean, we're spending now almost $500 million. And so just trying to make sure we're optimizing, maximizing our spend, or not maximize our spend, being as efficient as possible with our spend. So that's all the costs. So now I'm going to transition into revenue and sort of the cost of service model that we're in. The way we're supposed to we want to set revenues is to cover our costs, or to look at what our costs are. So again, I apologize, these numbers are somewhat small, bigger on that screen, I guess. So we've looked at 3 scenarios on how we want to set our revenue, which in turn set our rates. And I'll walk you through this table since it's probably the first time you're looking at it. On the left is no rate change. So what if we were to just keep our rates where they are today flat? What would that do to our change in net position? What would that do to our cash on hand? And what would the resulting discount be to PG&E? And you can see here, it would result in about a 10 million change in net position, sort of equivalent of a profitability there. And that would be about a 1% on average discount to PG&E. I caveat though, is that PG&E's rates have changed all over the map. Some have gone up, some have gone down. We purposely kept our rates stable in January. So already our customers are feeling a variety of discounts, and some, I think all discounts, no premiums. And if we were to keep our rates stable next year, it would exasperate. So we would have some people where 20%, I'm making up these numbers, 20% discount, some people maybe a premium. And so this scenario is kind of just for transparency. I'm not at all recommending this. We could recalibrate everyone's rates so that it's about a 1% discount to PG&E, which would be the same result, but we're not recommending keeping our rates stable because, again, there'd be huge variability on the discount. But just want to put that scenario out there. The middle scenario is what we call break even. And this is if we were setting our revenues to exactly equal costs. So you can see revenues and costs are the exact same. What would the resulting cash position be? What would the change in net position, which would be 0 because revenues equals costs? And what would the discount to PG&E here? And so this is a scenario that's entirely plausible. This would be following to the letter of the law, sort of the cost of service methodology. And we would be at about a 3% discount to PG&E on average, or for everyone across the board. The right column is, we boxed it because this is what our recommendation is given our strong financial position that we're realizing this current fiscal year and the establishment of the rate stabilization fund, which the board approved last month, we feel confident that we can use about 15 million of rate stabilization revenue. So this is revenue that we will defer from this year into next year, and be able to offer our customers a 5% discount to PG&E. Doing so would put our cash on hand at about 261 days. So right about that 250 days, although it decreases over the next few years. And we think that sends a positive signal to our customers because they've sort of come to expect the 5%. We don't have to. Our new policy is just set it to equal costs, but we feel that we're in a strong enough financial position that we can offer that 5% discount to our customers, and that is our recommendation. So if I was to assume that 5% discount, this is what revenues look like. Again, same format, 2023 or 2024 sort of actual plus forecasts, and what our budget is for 2025. I've included in here a row for the rate stabilization fund. So this is not our final recommendation, but based on where it looks like we're going to end up for the year, we're going to recommend probably a deferral of revenue of 65 million of revenue this current year. That's revenue that can be recognized in future years. And our recommendation is to recognize about 15 of that 65 next year. And so that ends up with a total revenue of about $476 million. If you exclude the rate stabilization fund, which is kind of noise, or it makes it hard to compare, it's about a 2% increase in revenue year over year. And that's due to the load that I've talked about. It's due to an increase in the Eco 100 charge, which Leslie will talk about. It's due to the Care Fair rebate we gave in 2024. So that's sort of artificially depressing 2024 revenues. And that's offset in part by lower average net rates. So that's our recommendation for revenue. If you,
Before we go
yeah,
there,
sorry.
are there any questions about that?
Yeah, sorry.
Thoughts, maybe, is it?
Okay.
Yeah,
This would-
thoughts right now.
Yeah,
Sure, and I have something to add when you guys are ready.
So just so the public's aware, we'll take public comment at the sort of end of the whole conversation, but although if somebody's itching to speak for public comment, just raise your hand, let Brianna know, and we'll open it up. So I think it would be helpful to just talk about this little piece right now, maybe break this down into bite-sized morsels. Do any of you have thoughts or comments on this proposal? Jeff?
I would prefer the staff recommendation. I would like to keep the 5% discount. I mean, this is why we established the rate stabilization fund. I think it's seeing it in action. I think it looks great.
No, it's consistent with our past policies, maintaining 5%.
Okay, everyone else is in agreement with that, right?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with it. My only question is, do we have? What's the long-term plan past that? What's sustainability like?
That's what I would comment.
Okay.
Can I comment first?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's comment first, and is everyone okay if I use first names in this meeting? Okay, great.
That is so much she's here. So the comment that I wanted to make here is that we're in a transition year. So just being blunt, in the truest sense of the word, we would rip off the Band-Aid and really, think about looking at that 3% break even, true cost of service, et cetera. That said, we have, the available cash position. And this is an unusual, I would say, and Leslie may disagree in the next presentation, but they're gonna be PG&E is dropping its rates by 11%. And there's a reason for that, which Leslie will explain more. So they're dropping their rates and then we're gonna drop it again, to 5%, which is another net decrease, even from keeping it flat at 2023 levels. So we're going even deeper, which I think we need to figure out how to communicate, right, to our customers, because it's an even greater discount than they enjoy now. What we've talked about internally is that, well, what's gonna happen in January with PG&E? Because it's unlikely that they're gonna maintain an 11% decrease, so it's probably gonna be some level of bump back up. So what we said we would do is come back and look at this again at the beginning of the year, once we know again what's gonna happen, and possibly recalibrate. The idea is to set rates once a year at this time of year, with the option that if there's a huge disparity and we're running in a deficit position, to then correct on those rates. So I just wanted to add that for additional rationale and context. Did you want to add anything regarding the long-term?
Yes,
Prognosis.
yes, no, there's a page in here, so it's great lead in, thank you for that. So a lot of numbers, so I apologize. We're looking for approval of just the 1-year budget, but as you asked the question, Ray, what does the long-term plan look like? So we thought it'd be important to list it in here, and so after 2025, so the 2025 column, we just sort of talked about, we didn't go through you've seen all the numbers, this is just on one page, and that's the 261 days cash on hand. In 2026, we expect to continue to be in this period of elevated cost of energy, REC, GHG free capacity costs. And so this scenario assumes a break even. We'll have the conversation again as we did now. And you can see in 2026, we will need another $20 million of revenue from the rate stabilization fund just to break even, assuming, you know, these are forecasted numbers. The further you go out in the forecast, they're less accurate. And so if you're asking the question, could we offer more of a discount this year? We're in such a great position, why don't we? I think this is what gives me a little pause of we need to keep some back for future years. I'm hoping we can offer our customers more than break even to PG&E rates next year. And that would require us dipping into more of the rate stabilization fund than's on this page. But I think that leaves a little, what's the right metaphor, ammunition or gunpowder, thank you. Powder dry, yeah. And so that's what's on this page. So this is the long term. You can see even at parity, even at a parity PG&E, you know, days cash on hand it's not bad, but it's within our range. So I think I feel comfortable with these numbers.
All right, does everyone agree with that then? Okay, and that answers your question, Gary?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think it's a great question, it's really important. I mean, we don't wanna leave future boards with a, you know, bound up financially, so they can't make better decisions.
Our official policy is 180 days cash on hand.
180 to 250 range, yeah.
Right there.
So I didn't include a page, so I apologize about that, but we are looking for action recommendation to the board. I think normally the finance and audit committee would do it.
They already saw it.
They already
but
saw
we
it.
decided it was important enough policy to pick it up to the full board, maybe to the full executive committee. So what we need now is the executive committee, if you approve this, to go ahead and make a motion to approve in a second, and then we'll make a full, that'll be a full recommendation up to the full board. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve? Thank you very much. We have Director Mueller, followed by Director Medina, Vice Chair Medina. May I have a show of hands? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you all very much. Leslie and Sean are our next centers.
So I'm gonna set this one up.
Nick, thank you. That's a lot of detail, but I think one of the best budgets we've ever had presented in terms of detail.
Thank you.
Leslie, if you don't mind, I'm gonna set this one up really quick. So there's a reason why, this one's coming right on the heels of Nick's presentation. And so Leslie will be leading us through a couple of, this is a discussion item, not an action item. So we do want discussion and your good questions and to unpack this. So we're ready to go for the board meeting. So Leslie's gonna be talking about updates to PCE rate tables, whether or not we should do, two sets of rates or a single set of rates. She'll talk a little bit about the rate updates, which was just covered in part by Nick. And then also an update to the Eco 100 premium. And again, I want to stress this is not an action item, it's discussion. So if there are any questions you have or anything we can do coming into the board meeting, what we will be seeking at the board meeting is approval of the board for whatever rate we decide to go forward with, so the staff can then set it when PG&E's rates come out, and it would be effective in August. So that's sort of what we're context for what we're heading into at the end of the month. Okay, go ahead to Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherman. So as we've talked about previously, PG&E will be updating rates effective July 1. As simple practice, those actual rate schedules are not resolved right before the rate update happens. Nick alluded this a little earlier, but for this year in particular, there was an under collection surcharge that was implemented in January that was accelerated. It was a 6-month surcharge. Normally that's collected over 12 months. That under collection fund by the PG&E advocated for it to be a 6-month collection, so it's a higher surcharge collected over a shorter period of time. Hence why we're having this rollback of roughly 11% on the gen side, going into effect July 1. What that's going to do is it's going to bring PG&E generation rates close to back to where they were previously. So us holding our rate stable is still, which is why we did nothing, that there's roughly that 1% differential. But as Nick noted, the rate billing determinant, so the differential between peak, off-peak, kind of these seasonality involved change quite a bit. So our rates are not calibrated correctly, you know, to PG&E rates right now. And why we would have sort of discounts or surcharges a little bit all over the board if we didn't make any change and kept everything at those 2023 levels. Right now, we're maintaining 2 rate schedules. We implemented, for those of you who've been here for a while, you remember when we enrolled Los Banos, we implemented a second rate schedule for the Los Banos territory to ensure that we have at least a 5% discount. At that point, the vintage surcharges were such that 2016 was lower than 2022. And if we'd implemented just 1 rate schedule rolling out to Los Banos, we would not have been able to offer a discount to Los Banos, hence why we needed to create that second rate schedule. And then we maintained that second rate schedule in 2023 for similar characteristics because of the differentials in the PCIA. Right now, the PCIA surcharges are such that we could move back to 1 rate schedule for all customers based off the 2016 vintage and still provide a discount to everyone that's at least 5% based off of the 2016 vintage. So we're going to get to a little bit more detail about that in the presentation. So 1 rate schedule versus 2 rate schedules for this next fiscal year. So if we set our rates on 1 rate schedule, all customers will have at least a 5% discount. The vast majority of PCE customers were taking service under that vintage 2016 rate because that's what we enrolled majority of San Mateo County at. Most of our Los Banos customers were actually enrolled on a 2021 vintage. About 85% of Los Banos is 2021. The remaining Los Banos customers are enrolled at 2022 vintage. And we do actually have a variety of vintages for our territory. We actually have customers on 2016 through the current day vintage was actually 2023 because if somebody opts out and they decide to re-enroll in service, we get assigned the current vintage in effect. There's a variety of reasons that are in effect for what's happening there, but we actually have customers across all vintages, but our primary vintages are 2016, 2021, and 2022. With the vintage, the PCIA vintage as we are now, we could, again, for a single rate schedule for all customers, calibrated at that 2016 rate or surcharge, and that would give at least a 5% discount to everybody. And so this is just a snapshot of the current sort of vintage surcharges, 2016 versus 2022, to give you an idea of what our current rates are calibrated off of. We do have a 2016 rate and a 2022 rate. These are the surcharges we're working off of. The difference right now is about a penny in that cost. So if we moved everyone to the 2016 rate, customers on the 2022 vintage would have about a penny in their headroom of a benefit. The rest of the vintages are, you know, they vary, but this is indicative of what other vintages would be experiencing. They have a little bit more discount because we would make our rates assuming a higher cost to them. And so when they have a lower surcharge on the other vintages, they actually get a little bit better discount. Couple things I want to point out, if we move to 1 rate schedule, and this is something I had some conversations with Nick about, because if we move to 1 rate schedule, right now we actually would be collecting slightly less revenue from customers because we wanted to keep that 2 rate schedule implementation and move all of Los Banos onto that 2022 vintage. It would result in about $1.2 million worth of additional revenue this year. That would be, we would have higher PCE charges for those customers. So that's what it would look like in our published rate schedule, will look like on customer bills. Their net discount would still be roughly 5%. But the charges coming from Peninsula Clean Energy would be higher than the charges in the published rate schedule that would be charged in San Mateo County. So just wanted to point that out. That is one of the reasons why I think it's best to move to a 1 rate schedule for everybody And two, the philosophy about why we had these two rate schedules to begin with was because we could not implement one rate schedule for all customers, and provide a discount. It was, we needed to have two rate schedules to make sure everyone had a minimum discount. The scenario has changed, the factors have changed so that we could offer everyone a discount with one rate schedule. And so that's why I've been advocating that we move back to one rate schedule for everybody, at least for now. We may find ourselves in a scenario in the future, we may want to do something different, but for now, I think it's best served that customers have a one rate schedule. It does reduce confusion for people when they're looking on the website, what rate schedule, is mine. It also decreases our complexity with billing operations with CalMine. They do currently have to go through and determine which customers on what rate schedule and make sure the right rates are applied. And again, just to highlight this, the customers with vintages other than 2016 will have a slightly higher discount, just to be clear. And so the proposal here is that we recalibrate the PCE rates following those PG&E changes that will go into effect July 1. To move everyone to one rate schedule based off of the 2016 vintage surcharges. And then that 5% discount based off of the 2016 surcharges, as Nick indicated, is going to estimates that we would require about a $15 million contribution from the rate stabilization fund in order to break, to be able to offer that to customers. And these new rates would be effective August 1, 2024. Again, the intent would be that these would be rates that would be implemented for a year until we do our next system-wide rate change next year. But we will revisit this when PG&E does do their update in January to make sure that that is still the path that we want to continue on. So I'm going to stop here before I talk about the Go on Hunger conversation and address questions.
Colleagues have questions? Jeff?
You kind of said it, but I assume this makes it a lot easier for you and just setting.
It does, yeah, it does.
Yes.
It's a little confusing,
It
right?
is,
We've
yeah.
been through this a number of times and it still takes a little more thought, at least for me, to kind of go, okay, I get it. Now, for our customers, how are we going to explain this?
So, and we'll have to work with Gwen on the messaging on this, but I would, we could confidently say that everyone would have at least a 5% discount. If we move to this rate schedule.
And this is all subject to change,
Yeah.
when PCIA changed.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest downside I see to it is just that somebody in San Mateo County might compare their rate to somebody in Los Banos and think, oh, they're getting a much better deal than me, what gives here? But I just don't see
Close
that.
enough now.
Yeah.
It's not, but everyone's getting a discount to PG&E. It doesn't feel like a big.
What do we have right now? 2 rates. And it's right now the 2016 rate is higher than the 2022 rate, and people are like, oh, well, how do I get that other rate? I'm gonna do a lower rate.
You know.
And it's like, no, this is the rate that you're assigned, and this is the right rate for you. So and having one rate schedule would to eliminate that conversation or perceived inequity of people who live in other places or have different vintages have less charges.
It's the application of the PCIA that nets out the difference in what that discount's gonna be. So we're setting a minimum
Right.
with the chance for a deeper discount if you happen to be in a later
Yeah.
PCIA.
And for context, the number of customers who are talking, 290,000 customers were signed this 2016 vintage, or I'm sorry, 285,000 2016 vintage, and then 13,000 or 12,000-ish Los Banos customers were in 2021, about 2,500 or in 2022, and then the bulk of the rest of all of the customers are assigned throughout the different vintages.
If somebody opted out of PCE 5 years ago, then the property changed hands and the new owner restarted service, they get back on PCE by default
Yes.
at the current vintage.
No, and so if it's a changed account and it's a new account holder, they'll actually get assigned historical vintage of 2016. If it's the customer does not change and they've opted out and then they re-enroll, then they get reassigned the new vintage. It's very confusing. It is something that we have to stay on top of with PG&E all the time. There's misfitting going on that we constantly have to audit. But yeah,
Actually, so now I take back what I said before. Our rate looks the same everywhere. It's just every customer's PCIA charge is different. So
Yeah.
somebody actually has to look really closely at
Right.
the bill, do the math to realize they're getting a better deal.
Yeah.
So it's not even that visible to our customers.
yeah.
Question? We don't have any members of the public want to chime in, just let me know. Thank you very much. Okay.
She has one more.
Okay, we're good, okay, perfect, thank you. Go for the Eco 100. Okay, so Eco 100 program. It's been a Green Heat certified product with a 1 cent premium since PCE launched service. We actually started on a review of the Eco 100 program this past year for some other side reasons around talking about potentially sunsetting the program or transitioning it into alternate products. Part of that review was triggered because of some changes that were on the horizon with Green E. Those have since resolved themselves, so we don't have that issue initially. But we did do this deep dive into who are Eco 100 customers, what's important to them, you know, what do we and actually what does it cost us to be providing this premium product, and are we charging an appropriate rate for it? And so that's what we, you know, went into, and we found that you know, for most of the time that we've been for Eco 100, we're actually, the numbers here are quite small, I'm sorry. We were more than covering our costs for providing that service. We look at the last couple of years, only in this most recent year of service where we encountered some more challenges on the procurement side for the type of RECs that we need to retire for this program. And the cost differentials from greenhouse gas free versus 100% renewable that we've run into where we're running at a bit of a deficit. So right now, last fiscal year was roughly 2 cents per kilowatt hour to provide that Eco 100 product for customers. We were only charging 1 cent. For this next fiscal year, we're projecting that it's going to cost roughly 1.6 cents, which we believe is going to be consistent for the next couple of fiscal years. And then looking like it's going to come back down again. All that can obviously change, you know, going forward. You know, in light of wanting to make sure we're charging an appropriate cost for Eco 100 and recognizing that in order to, it was actually very important that we have the product in its current state with the green certification and the current product mix for the customers that are buying Eco 100. We made the determination, or coming forward to say that we think we need to increase that premium surcharge to 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour. That is consistent with a couple of other CCAs that offer a premium product. They have been looking at evaluating and actually raising their rates for their premium product. Some CCAs are keeping it flat or have other charges, but this would not be out of line with some of our peers that have also been doing this analysis. Now, who is buying Eco 100? Our largest purchasers are our large commercial customers. We have a couple of very large commercial customers that are buying the bulk of our Eco 100 product. And then we have a significant number of our member agencies that are also opted up to Eco 100 for a variety of different reasons, for, you know, climate initiatives and other drivers for wanting to purchase renewable energy. So to give these customers the appropriate amount of time to potentially make budget decisions around Eco 100 and what they would like to do in future years, also to align with compliance reporting for Eco 100 with Green Needs, which is done on the calendar year. We're suggesting that this increase go into effect January 1, which gives us plenty of time to notice all customers about the change and update, and provide plenty of time for us to do some one-on-one outreach to our large customers and our member agencies to make sure that the increase in premium still works for them.
Jeff, you're in cities entirely on Eco 100. So I'm kind of curious, do you think you're gonna get any, do you think people will abandon Eco 100 and move to, can they, or?
I mean, they can, I don't know, I'm looking at my bill just to try to remember how many, like, what roughly how this impacts me, and it's not, I mean. I just wanna look at one real quick, cause I think I use a few hundred kilowatt hours, I mean, I think it impacts me by maybe like, $5 a month or something. I think most of our constituents, I mean, these people use a lot of electricity, so I think. It'll be, I mean, they're the biggest users, but it's still not something they're even gonna notice, I think, most months. I just wanna look at it quickly, just to make sure that I'm got that number right.
We can do some analysis for you too.
Yeah, but I don't think, I can't imagine it being a huge, I mean, I can
Well,
imagine
I
very
think
many.
the hardest will be, I know like a lot of our cities are on
Yes.
Eco 100 and have big bills. I know our cities, like a lot of our cities are on real tight budget, super tight budget. So it could result in some of the cities reevaluating to move back to just the regular product.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, well, yes, I think cities, maybe some businesses, I mean, I'm also just thinking about. We've got a lot of customers who are really dedicated and really care about it, and they're not as high income as my constituents.
Yeah.
They're, I mean, it's gonna have more of an impact on them, I think, but that's where it's sort of.
What is the difference to the environment between the regular product and the Eco 100, given that the regular product is moving more and more?
Yeah, this is a really great question, and it really is sort of a technical difference between what we are, because our Eco Plus product is 100% clean product. We're not, procuring any fossil fuels, in our Eco product. There is some large hydro in that mix, which is not technically renewable, it is non-carbon emitting. And then we do have some geothermal, some of which is associated with the category of geothermal that has some greenhouse gas emissions assigned to it. And so our Eco Plus product does have a little bit of carbon emissions. It's only, just did our P scale analysis for 2023. It's only 6 pounds of CO2, per kilowatt hour, per megawatt hour, which is great. But for some of our largest commercial customers, they have initiatives for like zero carbon, right? And so they need a zero carbon product. Our Eco 100 product is 100%, it's 50% wind, 50% solar, California based. So it is a zero emissions product. And it is also certified by Green E, which is another important factor for some of our larger commercial customers, those who are using the Eco 100 purchases to meet their LEED requirements for LEED points. And so those are the reasons why, because we actually looked at a whole bunch of different ways that we could maybe change the product around, keep the premium lower, adjust it. Could we drop the Green E certification? Could we like mix around the product mix a little bit? And really came around to like, this is actually what we need to do to serve the needs for our customers that in general are our biggest buyers of this product. And so, yeah, that's where we're at. But for the everyday regular residential customer, it really is about, do you want to have 100% renewable energy, assigned to you on the product content label, or are you comfortable with a clean Eco Plus product that has a little bit of GHG emissions associated with it? Yeah, right. Yeah.
So when you say we need to do this for our biggest customer, I'm assuming we talked to Meta about this.
We've been in conversations ongoing with them, Justin, that is Justin's camp to make sure that they're clear on it, but we previewed for them that, yeah, we're probably going to need to make an adjustment to that rate. And for them, it is important enough to keep that product mix, for all of the other reasons. Yeah.
Colleen?
My concern with this is how the messaging is going to be conveyed. And saying, oh, to get certification, we have to raise it another 0.5 cent. Could be taken as we were asleep at the wheel. And I think we have to find a way to sell this more in terms of everyone's trying to use cleaner energy, and so there's more demand, but we want to still offer this product.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And maybe that's not the best messaging, but I think rather than just telling people it's going up. I
Yeah.
don't think that's going to work.
Yeah,
Well, I think a lot of people buying this already know they're paying premium and you say, I think the big industrial users, you can have one-on-one conversation. I think cities, we probably need to send something out to let them know so they can budget, right? Like I'm in the middle of budget season, so it would be helpful to know if my bill. And so I think those are two huge client bases, and then there's individuals like all of us. And I think most people that purchased Eco 100 are kind of, the elasticity of demand for it is pretty high, so they're gonna pay for it no matter what. And then, so I think there's almost like 3 different messaging programs, Sean.
So there's a reason that this is a discussion item today. And that is that this particular issue is not, it's not super black and white. And so I'm just gonna provide some additional context for background here, because I think your points are very well taken. So when you look at the revenue potential of raising this rate through the backside of fiscal year 25, it's estimated to bring in $750,000. It's not a whole lot. In the future, around 1.5, because we don't have a ton of customers that are Eco 100.
What percent is it?
What percent is Eco 100, do you know?
I mean, so the sales are, it's whatever, like 3 million kilowatt hours a year. In terms of sales, in terms of actual customer count, it is quite low, because majority of sales are going to
It's about 3%.
10 customers.
It's, let's say it's below 5%. We'll get back to you on the exact number there.
Yeah.
I think the overriding concern, it's really, it's layered, right? And so the concern that was raised to us through our power resources team is that because of those high costs of RECs that we talked about at the beginning of this meeting, now we're out of sync. It's costing us more to deliver on a voluntary product, right? But in the past 2 or 3 years, that hasn't been the case. And so there's actually been a net contribution on that premium. And so there is a sensibility around thinking about it, at least maybe for this year as a wash. My biggest concern is actually losing customers. So customers always have the option to opt back down, which would be fine. But, and we have been working with Justin and Leslie and making a couple of exploratory calls. The general sentiment among staff is we don't think we would have a lot of opt-outs. Frankly, even one opt-out is what makes me nervous in a commercial, because you can't, those customers are very hard to get back. And you know, your point about the city impact. So there's a reason that this is a discussion. I think we should all think about this and maybe do some additional analysis if you would like us to.
Just coming off of several budget sessions in our city, one of the biggest drivers of expenses in our city is energy costs across the board, fuel, electricity. And so it's a big concern. That's what, and what Sean, what you said about, my concern is that people will go, well, we would love to do it, but can't do it anymore. And I think that's a bad look. So whatever we can do to soften this or sell it better, let's get creative.
Yes, right.
I have a question, if what happens, is there a downstream effect if customers do start dropping off? And if so, by what significant portion will need to drop off to see it impact pricing?
Let's do some.
You know, I
If they
don't.
drop out of PCE or drop
Oh,
back
no.
to Eco.
Drop out of Eco 100, I'm assuming that.
Or go back to Eco Plus?
Yeah,
No,
Not a lot.
I
That's
don't, I
not a big.
actually.
deal.
That's the-
Yeah, the purchase comments are honestly quite negligible compared to our portfolio. That if, you know, we lose some of the commercial customers from the product and they just opt down to Eco Plus, it's not going to materially change, you know, the cost impact of procuring those additional reps. Like, we're already procuring, you know, right now to keep our renewable product up. This is just sort of closing the gap between like where we're at for our minimum product content and 100% is what this additionality of procurement is. And so it would just take out a small sliver of additionality of procurement for a subset of customers.
It sounds like this is becoming more of a boutique product. And that the preferable product is the Eco Plus.
Yeah.
Right,
We're
That's
just,
our default.
we're just providing it, I think, because some of our larger customers have compliance needs.
And there was a request for it.
The
We-
request.
And when we launched, the Eco 100 product was offered as a voluntary opt-up for folks who really wanted to go the mile, and we also wanted to incentivize, we PCE, and I can say that because I think I was in the room with you guys, wanted to incentivize people to opt up and go get to an early adopter to 100% renewable energy. So we were actually a driver as much as it's now become a desirable product for commercial customers.
we're at the time in our city that I argued it was the cost of a candy bar, but it sounds like it's not.
Yeah.
Could we in fact incentivize the blow of the increase by actually giving recognition to, we had the list there before, to the customers who are on these plans?
A lot of them are confidential and.
Oh, they are
Yeah,
confidential.
they don't,
Okay.
they're.
don't
like,
want it.
Yeah, like, yeah. And a lot of them are, like, I personally wouldn't wanna put out there on the city even, like, I just think it's important to deal with it in our climate action plan. Cause I'm gonna have, people coming out of the woodwork going, this is just a way that the city's wasting money.
Waste of money,
You know.
gotcha.
So I think it's important to talk to the customer, but then let the individual customer decide how they wanna promote it.
I do just want to note that additionality is really important to our unions and our policymakers. It's not just, additionality is what puts new things onto the grid. It's not RECs, right? And I think that was probably a major policy factor, is why this was instituted.
Got the word message that you're gonna need to do a lot of outreach to the cities and to the other customers, and maybe there's something that.
I would like to hear from you guys whether or not you agree with, because what you're hearing from me is I'm not 100% in either corner. So that's why it's discussion.
So, okay.
I was gonna say, I hate to get cavalier about $1 million or just under $1 million, but it might not be worth it in terms of, in terms of everything we have to do with the potential for just, it's good, you just kind of poke the bear in some cases, and people out there are gonna maybe. I had a huge rash of opt-outs at the beginning of this, just on general principles, because people were getting these mailers and didn't understand what's going on. Go back and tell the same people, oh, we're gonna raise your price extra half cents kilowatt. I'm gonna get another rash of opt-outs, I think.
So in other words, you're just thinking, just do it and.
No, just
Oh,
not
leave
Leave it at 1 cent.
just leave it at 1 cent for the time being. And just given the impact on our bottom line right now, it's.
Well, it becomes a program, if you will, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
becomes something that
And-
we line, I think that's where
It becomes a strategic,
it just
thing.
becomes a strategic
Yes.
decision.
because it does promote some addition, it does promote some additionality, it's a small piece, but it's part of our mission.
At the same time, the big corporate customers that are sort of, invested in this and can't really go away from it, I don't really feel like subsidizing them.
That's the debate.
That was a significant internal conversation.
Yeah.
Like, why should I subsidize Meta?
And I do want to note the customer status is typically confidential, so.
Right, yeah,
we-
but that's.
I'll just say, those customers that we publish up there, we've done public announcements of their participation in Eco 100. I would never push anyone up there that did not have a public,
Thank you.
announcement of their Eco 100 status, yeah.
Oh, my city. It is. Any other?
We phase this in more slowly.
I think that just creates so much work for our staff.
I understand, but then it's less.
But I also think to me, it's like you either do it, rip the Band-Aid, just do it once, or you just. Capture them out over months and they get mad every time you call and say, raising it again and again and again.
I'm just looking at the
Or
date
wait for a year.
coinciding with PG&E raising rates potentially in January again, and it's just that negative everybody going, oh my God, energy's so expensive.
This is always, at least for me, and it's a personal choice, right? If you really want to, even though it's a little bit of a more cost, to feel good that your power is totally clean, that's the price we pay. And I think that everyone that's already on that list, the big users, they already know that, and continuing to do so, there's a premium. It's a Eco 100 is a premium. It's those that can afford to pay for it. Right.
Spend an extra $150 by your carbon. You choose to do it, yeah.
I don't know, I mean, I'll be honest, I feel like it's sort of a philosophical change that when at least from the, I wasn't, for years, I've not been on this board, but I can tell you from the outside perspective, Eco 100 seemed to be the thing that you wanted people to reach to. This discussion seems to now to be instead to say, this is the boutique product for people who need to reach a certain certification and for others who might want that extra mile, but it's no longer where we're trying to move the consumer to. And I think that philosophically is different.
Yeah, I mean, I think our regular Eco Plus product is on a 24, we have the 24/7 modeling, I mean, the ideal would be, you're right, to merge the two products, right? Like the two products become one. And you can see why it's so complicated to get Eco Plus to the Eco 100, why cost is prohibitive.
But that was another part of this discussion, because originally we had promised that by 2025, we had hoped to be 100% renewable for our Eco Plus. And for all the reasons, and I think the board made the right decision from a cost perspective. So for these large customers, they were hoping to not have to pay a premium starting next year.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough one. It's because now we're saying, well, if it's a true cost to serve, then it's 1.5 cent premium. But not only did you not get us moving, but now we're gonna charge you more. So we can go back and do some initial analysis on this if you like.
I think it's gonna come out, I think if you implement this, it's gonna come out two ways. People are gonna look at the economics of it and they're gonna either say, I need to spend less money and I'm gonna move to the regular traditional product, which is
Yeah.
still really, really good.
Yep.
Way better than PG&E, or I have a demand I need to meet and I'm not price sensitive to it, or at least not as price sensitive, and I'm gonna go ahead and adopt.
Or I'm mad and I'm gonna opt.
I really don't think we have an opt-out.
I think it's a very direct communication about what exactly is changing softly. I think if you say to people, Eco Plus has reached a point where we actually think it satisfies the needs. We're gonna continue to offer Eco 100 to this segment based on these things. And if you want to pay that premium to be that, fine. But if not, Eco Plus is where to be.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's gonna opt out of it.
No one's going to opt out, I agree. And if you're talking a very tiny number of customers on the commercial side, and the cities are easy to communicate to. And then really what you have is your, like, all of us customer base, and where, I think, I don't know how to reach them most effectively, but Gwen can come up with something super smart. So are we okay to then maybe consider this, but with a very robust campaign around it, a communications campaign, as Grace suggests, to help smooth the transition? Yes.
So with all of this, I basically am against doing it right now. And I'm wondering is, for the reasons that have been articulated. Are the staff costs and the cost we do to outreach and have a program and all, does that balance out to the $750,000? In other words, is it a benefit? Is now the right time to do it?
And just to be clear, we're not, I think our proposal was to delay it until January, just for that reason. We didn't want to do it too quick, so we're trying to give customers 6 months to implement it. But you're saying not even January 1?
Next time would be January 26th.
I think that's too long. I think it's because then the rest of everybody else is subsidizing all these people.
But what I heard was that this program has been subsidizing for years, so I would also, you know, is this going to?
It's been a contributor or
The last couple of years,
us, like we're making money for that?
a little bit.
So we're not.
And I wish there was a way to separate maybe this off.
Yeah. So,
So this year's the first year that we would subsidize this program, otherwise this program's been contributing to the base.
So we are confident that in future years it will also be, we will be subsidizing it.
Well, I think the thought was to reassess every year.
yeah, it would be to reassess it, and so,
See how it's gonna go.
and the analysis around this was, and the thought moving forward would be to treat this like other rates and moving to more cost of service, modeling. And if we need to make an adjustment, we would make an adjustment, going forward, on future years. I would still ideally like to keep the schedule of the calendar year adjustment so that we would have a timeframe, appropriate timeframe to notice everyone if we're going to increase the cost. Because there's some noticing requirements for Greenie, but also I think it's just appropriate to give that leeway to folks if the costs are gonna have to go up.
I'm also thinking that we are doing our city budgets right now, and so this would hit 6 months of city budgets.
But you can notify the cities and then make a decision to opt out.
Up, down.
The opt out.
Opt
Yeah, no, opt
That
out.
would be disappointing too, is to have cities.
Cities would still be an Eco 100. I mean,
Eco
Eco
Plus.
Plus, they'd still be an Eco Plus, they just wouldn't be paying premium. Now, cities have just been given an enormous contribution from PCE. They could choose to use some of that money to offset their bill for the next year.
Okay.
So that's the way I look at it a little bit,
Yeah.
like, and I have all the people out there that shouldn't be being subsidized. To me, it's the cities. So I think cities can all make a decision, like, if you're really in bad financial shape, you can go from Eco 100 to Eco Plus and not feel bad.
Yeah, and the cost impact, Justin did actually just send me a little brief about that for the cities. Or for the, partner agencies, in the smallest case, it's like annual cost increase was roughly $65. Most are under $10,000. There's a couple that are more than that are the larger cities, but majority of the city partners are under $10,000 cost differential.
So one of the. Yeah, probably the biggest cities.
But it's for Facebook.
Facebook. Oh, yeah, the big ones.
It's based on usage, yeah, so it's based on your municipal accounts, how many kilowatt hours are you consuming, and that's, yeah.
Maybe one compromise here is to say, staff, we're gonna agree to this, go out, meet the messaging, it's not gonna happen January 1st, talk to the cities. And if something starts to really go haywire or come back and talk to us about it, and we can make an adjustment at that point.
That's a good idea, then find out just how sensitive people are.
That work?
Yeah.
Do we need a motion or is that just a?
No, it's just discussion.
Okay,
Yeah.
does that work for everybody? So we can get on to the other.
Thank you very much for going down that.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie. Thanks. You got clear direction then? All right. Number 6. Wait, members of the public, does anyone have a comment on item number 4? Okay, no public comment. Thanks, Brianna. All right, item number 6. Recommend the board of directors approval of residential low-income self-generation incentive SCHIP program. So we have Yana and Yana's here. Hi, Yana.
Want me to stop really quick? Sure. I do want to introduce Yana. I don't know if all of you have met her. She's been with us now about 4 months, I believe. Joined us from MCE, where she did fantastic work, bringing in revenues from various grant and other sources, including CPUC, federal funding, state funding. And so she's on board with us to do many things, including looking at all the different ways that we can diversify our revenue. She's going to move quickly through these slides, and then we will come back in August for a much bigger discussion around the overall strategy. We needed to bring this to you today because there's some time sensitive deadlines. So yeah.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, it's really nice to meet you all again. Jana Kopicek-Lande. I'm talking today about one initiative that I'm working on here at PCE. It's called the Self-Generation Incentive Program Assistance Program, working really closely with Raphael, who's on vacation today, so you can't be here. But before I jump into the details of what SCHIP is and what we want to do with the program at PCE, I wanted to provide a really quick context on, again, the work that I'm planning on doing and I already jumped in at PCE to just give you a sense of all the things that I'm looking at. And so you can place the SCHIP assistance program kind of in context. And there's a lot of information on the next two slides. We're not going to dig in, just like Sean said, we're going to have a meeting in August where we're going to really get into more of the details. But just to let you know that I'm looking into funding opportunities for our programs in all kind of 4 big buckets. In the energy efficiency, electrification world, for behind the meter distributed energy resources, for front of the meter distributed energy resources, and real-time pricing is really something that's very important and gets a lot of public attention right now in the programs world. So those are the 4 big buckets. I'm looking both into funding from the state, the CPUC and the CEC, so ratepayer funding and grant funding. I'm also looking into federal funding opportunities from the IRA and the IIJA. So there are lots of opportunities out there. We want to grow our programs, and I think we can take advantage of some of those funding streams to grow them more effectively and larger and bring more funding into San Mateo County and Los Baños. So what I'm talking about today, specifically a funding opportunity that supports growing our DER programs. This should hopefully look familiar to you. Peter has talked about our DER strategic plan in recent weeks. We want to do more things on growing solar plus storage behind the meter, bringing more of those resources into our community. We want to create what's called a virtual power plant where we coordinate different load flexibility technologies for the benefit of communities and the grid. And so what I'm talking about today fits into this bucket here. It's an opportunity to find funding to bring solar plus storage resources to our customers. And most interestingly, to our low-income customers. So what is that opportunity? The SCHIP program, maybe some of you have heard of it. It's been around for a long time, since 2003, one of the longest standing energy programs in California. It's morphed in many different shapes and forms, but its current version, the core purpose of it is to incentivize the installation of storage, energy storage for customers that face resiliency challenges, that want to manage their load. It's available for residential and non-residential customers. And it is a statewide program that's incentivized by the IOUs. And the legislature recently added funding to SCHIP that is coming out by the end of this year. And that is why we think it is important to engage right now, because SCHIP funding, it is typically the incentives that are provided under the program are rich, especially for equity customers or customers located in resiliency areas. And so the funding goes quickly. The biggest challenge with the SCHIP program is that funding is allocated to it, and within days or weeks, the funding is gone. And a lot of customers miss out on the opportunity. And so what we've been talking about here at PCE is to develop a program that supports income qualified residential customers in accessing the program. It's a complex program with complex application requirements. So we want to help eligible customers to access incentives by doing 3 things. 1, we would do an outreach campaign to identify and recruit eligible customers. It's hard to even understand for most customers, am I eligible, am I not eligible? We would help them to understand if they're eligible and make sure they know about the opportunity. Then we would hire a rebate administrator to support the actual application process, which is very detailed. You need to have a lot of documentation. Most people don't know where to start. So there are actual third-party entities out there for a fee that can help customers and developers, contractors to apply to SCHIP. And then we would also provide
independent third-party application support and technical assistance. A lot of customers, especially income qualified customers, don't even know where to begin when they want to install solar plus storage, right? They know it could potentially help them, but it seems so overwhelming, they don't know where to start. And so we would have a technical assistance, just someone who can talk to them about questions, but also potentially connecting to our 0% financing offer if they have any costs that are not, if they incur any costs that are not covered by the SCHIP incentives themselves. One thing that I need to mention real quick, I was trying to, like Sean said, keep this really brief, so I don't want to give you too much details about how SCHIP works. It's a quite complex program. But the important part is that this funding that's coming out is focused on low-income customers only, 80% AMI, residential only, and it is expected that the incentives cover 100% of project costs to install either just storage or solar plus storage. So that's a great value proposition for low-income customers who want to do solar plus storage but can't afford it. These SCHIP incentives are expected to cover 100% of costs. PCE could add additional financing if they had roofing upgrade needs that the program wouldn't cover, or any other remediation costs that the program wouldn't cover. We could support them in that. And then for us, the end goal would be to integrate those resources into our VPP that we're actively working on developing. Just the last quick two things I'm going to say is just give you a sense of budget. There's going to be around $125 million available in PG&E service area. Again, expected to go really quickly. And we've set a kind of arbitrary goal at this point to enroll about 200 customers. That would bring about $4.6 million in SCHIP incentives to our customers.
Okay. You're continuing, sorry.
No, yeah, and that's really just it already. This is the request. So we're requesting the approval of the PCE SCHIP assistance program. I said it would bring in about $4.6 million, and we would spend, this is the request, but our work, we probably have to hire a rebate administrator. We're expecting less than $100,000 in cost. It depends on the number of applications to actually look at. We would, the programs team would have a dedicated staffer. The marketing team would do an outreach campaign. We would kind of test out 0% loan offer, and that's it.
Questions?
Yes.
I'll just point out, this is of a piece of what we talked about with the new contact center of this becomes one of our other programs where we get more people to call us when their water heater breaks down, when they're looking to do upgrades on their house. So it's just part of the strategy of becoming much more of a customer centric. For a customer base is actually really hard for us. So I'm very much
Supportive.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so it feels like it's a very low cost, high reward type, program. So if everybody's okay with it, can we have a motion to approve this recommendation? Jeff?
Before we make a motion, can we take public comment?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All those, any members of the public who would like to comment? No public comment? Yes, Andrew?
What's the expectation cases?
Sorry, I had trouble hearing you. Can you repeat that?
So, the expectation of the customer basis will be
Yeah.
allocation.
Yeah, so it's specifically $1.10 per watt hour for the solar system, for the storage system, and $3.10 for solar. That probably doesn't tell you much. But if we have,
The home.
yeah, for the home, I think it's about 12,000, and don't quote me on this, I can send you the numbers, I have them in my spreadsheet. But I think it's about 12,000 for the storage system. And then I don't want to guess on the solar right now. I don't have the numbers on top of my head right now. But I'll send you those numbers.
And we'll have it for the board meeting.
Yeah.
This is state, a state program. So, I mean, to me, if we can estimate that we can pick up 4.6 out of the 125, like, I really think it's beneficial to.
It's not coming out of rate base.
Yeah, not rate, this is money that if we don't help people get it, then we're gonna leave it on the table.
Yeah.
So we really wanna help people. Okay.
Just to say that real quick, the incentives were developed to cover all project costs, it's supposed to be free. There was a long regulatory process how to figure out what it's costing, but
And the income qualified is Karen Farah.
it's 80% A and B, which aligns with our income.
Great. Okay. I think that's fantastic.
Just looking at 4.6 million out of 200, that's about $23,000 per
Yeah,
household.
and it depends, we did some assumptions with half of them just doing solar plus storage and some of them just doing standalone storage, so.
They're also somebody like.
Yeah.
Required.
Up to 3,500 per home.
Yeah. I think it's great. Okay, can we have a motion by Alice Chap and a second by Anders? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone? No? Great. Motion carries unanimously. All right, item number 7.
Item number 7 is proposed administrative updates to operating policies 14, 15, and 16. I'm going to lead on, thank you. I'm going to lead on this one with Nellie chiming in. Nellie and Jen Stelzer did a huge amount of work to do side-by-side comparison and figure out where we had discrepancies, outdated information, and in some cases, duplicative information. So we're going to just go down the list here. So as I just mentioned, staff identified inconsistencies between our operating rules and regulations, and now is a good time to just be clear what we mean by that is our policies. So that is how PCE embodies operating rules and regulations. That's the phrase that's used in the JPA agreement. It's also a good opportunity to stop here and say, you know, I think you all know the difference, but for purposes of the public, both the JPA agreement and board policies are approved by the board. So the board has full discretion over the contents of all of these. The JPA agreement is like the umbrella governance structure that was created back in 2015, adopted, I think in early 16 or maybe late 2015, when PCE was born. It has been amended, I think only once, maybe twice, but definitely the last time it was amended was for the Los Banos enrollment. And when Nellie went through it all, it was just clear that there were just some places where it was oppositional to some of our policy language. The other thing about a JPA agreement is that it requires a 30-day posting. It gets sent back to our member agencies, and there are several more steps for good reason why kind of the bones of our governance, it just takes longer to amend that. So staff conducted a thorough review, 14, 15, and 16. All of these intersect with the JPA agreement or with each other, which is why we're bringing it to you as a collection. And then another piece of context is that at the end of last year, the board chair requested that staff develop decorum procedures to guide public participation in Brown Act meetings. So that is the phrase that typically gets read during our board meetings. And then Nellie identified the need to have more thorough board of director committee and advisory committee operating procedures to really just codify our current practice because it was not written down. So it becomes an SOP for us. Okay, so very quickly, this is all outlined in your memo, but there are 4 primary proposed updates to policy 14. The first is just making the title easier to understand. So we're proposing a new title that would read non-energy agreement, signatory and delegation policy. This has been approved by Jen Stelzer at the county. We are also suggesting that the dollar threshold of the CEO signing authority, which is currently at $100,000, move out of the JPA and live in policy 14, so that there's never a time when we're in misalignment on that. We're also suggesting that the CEO authorization move up to 250,000. This seems like a significant jump. I totally understand that. And I do want to say, I have no dog in this hunt. So if you don't, it's perfectly fine. The reason that we're doing this is to frankly reduce the number of lower dollar value contracts that have to come to the board for approval. So your time can focus on the big stuff. We also looked at what does the original $100,000 threshold, which is established in 2016, look like compared to bumping it to 250,000 now. And as you can see, the 250,000 would represent well under a percentage point for our non-energy budget, whereas back in the day, 100,000 was representing just under a percentage point. So if you use that logic, we could make the argument to go higher, but felt like let's make some fundamental change. I do also want to say that PCE would be at the middle of the pack. When we looked at what our sister CCAs are doing, MCE is at 400,000. Let's see, where did I write all of this? San Jose is looking to bump to 400. Sonoma Clean Power is currently at 250. And Silicon Valley Clean Energy is looking to move their threshold up to, I think, beyond 250, but I should know
And
by the end of the month.
just to sort of add on here, I think the institutional framework for this was, we were just getting started. We didn't have a CFO, we didn't have a C-suite, we didn't have all the controls and monitoring on, so having the board be kind of involved in this was a little bit of a secondary set of controls. We have the C-suite built out, we have policies and procedures put in now, we have a 7-year track record. I feel very comfortable moving to this threshold. I think it's more consistent with how the kind of business the board should conduct, focusing on the big things. So we're gonna move on to other items, but I
Yep,
just wanted to
we're
comment
considering
right now. We'll go back and talk about all this and get.
Thank you. So then, just the last thing updated in policy 14, and you'll see this across the board. Nowhere did we have it written that the CFO or COO would have the CEO's delegated authorities if for some reason the CEO is absent or, you know, something happened that took me out, which would be a bummer. So what we're saying is that the CFO, COO would have those contracting authorities with written approval of either the CEO or the board chair. Okay, the only proposed update to policy 15 is what I just was talking about. This is the policy for energy related procurement. So it would be for both kinds of procurement. Policy 16 is where we have the bulk of the changes, as you probably saw in the red lines. It got a whole lot longer and the scope expanded to really be much more comprehensive. So the first change is to clarify the policy title, which expands the scope. The new title will be Policies and Procedures for Board of Directors, Committees, and Advisory Groups. We're also recommending officer term limits to be removed here and moved to the JPA agreement. We'll talk about this in a minute, but the current recommendation is for a 2-year term.
And I'll talk a little bit about that
In the next, great. It gives much more scope and procedures for our Brown Act committees, our staff-led committees, and advisory groups. It adds the emeritus advisory group language in this policy rather than JPA. Moves it here. Additional information on remote meeting attendance, which is required by law. And then we added those guidelines around decorum and public participation as noted earlier. So that's the bulk of the changes here. Here's the very long-winded recommendation that I won't read, but it's essentially asking you to recommend adoption to the full board of the proposed changes. So stop the questions.
So I want to just elaborate momentarily on the 2-year term limit. So we have had the great fortune to have Supervisor Pine and then Director Alves and then Director DeGolia spend 9 years essentially helping get this thing up and running. And it was really critical because Dave, I think you sort of started and then we weren't even really officially running, like the first year you were running this and then 2. And we needed that like a little bit longer consistency. And I also think partnership with the former CEO who just, it was a more high touch and high management situation. So creating that longer term stability really worked. So when I look at good governance in most organizations under which I work, and I think even if you think about like mayoral terms and electorate terms, 2 years is really a little more consistent. And it also is not onerous to, you know, all of us who are really, really busy to get in line, because if someone says you're gonna have to do this for 3 years, that's a really long time. We all have so many other committees we're working on. I think 2 is quite manageable. We've got a nice succession planning situation going where the vice chair has tended to move into the chair role. People on these committees are being cultivated for leadership roles, and it has sort of blossomed organically into a succession, a standardized succession situation. So my recommendation was to move to a more of an official 2-year term. And also it will allow more people to participate in the process of leadership, which is really gives Sean an opportunity to hear different perspectives and, you know, pull on people who, you know, I think can be very beneficial in having new views, new thoughts, new leadership styles. So if it's all right with everyone, that's why I recommended this change. And I think it's healthy for our organization.
This comes up actually in the next agenda item for JPA.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about moving it over there.
Okay,
So we can engage now or?
no, we can do it in that, but I just wanted to kind of frame it a little bit here. So I think our next step would be, if there's no questions, does anyone have questions here? If there's no questions, I'd like to open it to public comment. Does anyone have any comments? No, okay, no comment. So this is an item that's requiring action. So given what Sean just outlined right here, is there anyone who'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendation? Yes, Betsy, please, thank you. I'm staring right at you. And Supervisor Pine, second. Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. That was really an excellent debrief. Item number 8, discussion to approve updates to the JPA.
So this one goes with the previous item. So this is just all part of the administrative cleanup and updating that we're trying to do to get everything in our house in order, as it were, and everything kind of cleaned up.
And you see we're rushing this as Nellie gets larger and larger.
Yeah.
There is some timing consideration.
Indeed, and
I
do want to acknowledge Nellie once again, just for, you know, digging in. This took actually several months to this point. All right, so I think you understand the background that some of this was outdated, duplicative, in need of clarification. These are primarily administrative and operational changes, not super complex content. Once the board approves the proposed amendments, hopefully at the end of June, the JPA agreement will go out to all of our member agencies for a 30-day comment period before returning to the board in August for what we hope will be final approval. Okay. So here's a quick rundown.
Do the agencies have to vote as well?
Is Jen on the line? They may have to. Or Kelsey, sorry.
I didn't hear the question. Can you repeat, please?
When the JPA agreement goes out for the 30-day comment period back out to our member agencies, do they have to bring it back to the city council or board of supervisors for an affirmative vote?
Oh, I'm not sure. That might have to do with their process, but I will look into that and get back to this board.
My gut feeling is no. I think it's a comment period so that the cities are notified, they can provide comment back to us, the public's notified, they can provide comment back. But I don't think it requires official actions by the.
Which would be great, because most of us are on leave during that time, so
Yeah.
to get it done.
Yeah, I think that is correct, but we will verify that, supervisor, and make sure that's in the board packet.
We're all ever voting on a JPA change.
Yeah, no, okay.
We'll look that up. Okay, so here's the, a lot of this we've already covered. So what we're talking about for the JPA updates is that the director's emeritus language that's in here now would move to policy 16.
Mhm.
The board authorities, we've just added to clean up that it extends to the CPUC, to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and other agencies, gives the board authority to do filings and staff. Moves the dollar value of the CEO contracting authority to policy 14. The other language remains in the JPA. It updates the officer term limits from a maximum of 3 to 2 years to better align with local election cycles, as Donna served up. It updates the right to withdraw language from 6 months to 12 months to reflect the current reality of resource adequacy rules, because those are 12 months in advance showings. So, and then it adds, it updates budget language. This is new information. Borrow this for a second. So, sorry that this did not make it into the packet. I'm going to refer to this handout here. So what we wanted to do here was to update the language in section 531 for the budget to reflect not the initial budget, right? So this is just cleanup here. What we wanted to now say is the annual budget shall be approved by the board. That's the same. Staff shall report to the board quarterly budget results, which we currently do, and any significant budget variances. The board may revise the budget as needed to address any significant changes and or unexpected expenses incurred. This is essentially the letter or the spirit of what is below. It's just reflective of what we do today.
The reality of it all.
Yep. So that was, thank you to Nick for serving that up as a cleanup there. So that concludes my remarks. Our recommendation is that the executive committee recommend to the board of directors approval of administrative edits to the JPA with the inclusion of the new section on the board updates, budget. This would then come to the full board and then it would go out for 30 days.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Staff? Yes.
Thank you for updating all these things.
Yeah,
It's like we're just-
really Nelly
What do we do?
was
Yeah.
like cranking on that.
But you worked on it, Rick
Yeah,
worked
we all
on
worked
it,
on it.
you
Rick
know.
and I worked on it a lot. We checked in with Marty. So we've all kind of been adding on to this and having a few meetings just to make sure we got it all cleaned up and we're all on the same page with it. I would like to open it to members of the public. If anyone from the public has a comment at this time, knowing you will also have a 30-day public comment period once it's posted. Okay, seeing no comments from members of the public, I'm gonna close that. So this is also an action item, so we would need, again, a formal recommendation to take this to the full board. Thank you, Colleen. Second, Anders? Second by Anders, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, that's it. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate knowing that Marty's gonna take his job over 2 years. I was like, oh my God. Get this moving on. So thank you all very much. Do we have any committee member reports here? Nothing? Okay, great. I do want to say also that Raphael and Jeff, Raphael came to talk about our fleet electrification, and Philip came on Zoom. And my staff, especially our head of kind of public works department, sort of right there, the gentleman who handles all of our fleet and everything, came into the meeting. And these are my, kind of longest sort of more, change, a little bit, sometimes change resistant people. And they were so appreciative of PCE. They were the first city to, I think, to start on that project. And I will tell you right now, get your staffs involved with Raphael and the team. They put together a fleet electrification plan that is going to get us completely electrified by hopefully 27. So 50% by next year, 70, all the full electrification, with everything that we can buy, like sort of big heavy equipment, not. And they're combining it and using some of the money and the funds that are available. And it is just sweet. So if anybody needs help, talk to Sigal, Michael who's our sustainability coordinator, or Mike Heathcote is the person at the city of Burlingame who's working with Raphael. And they can set the model and hopefully we can do. Yes, let's see.
We've had some experience in work with electrified vehicles, which I think would be very helpful for other departments. I know that we are moving away from the Teslas. And just because of size constraints, by the time everyone gets all their equipment on, and there's some benefits, but also we're looking at other
Perfect.
vehicles, so definitely.
Maybe staff and white paper on it, like police electrification white paper that we can share out. Colleen?
I was just gonna echo what you said, Donna, about a public works director who was very reluctant to turn over control and is now singing the praises of PCE.
Somebody said to me the other day, wow, PCE is hitting it out of the ball. So just want you all to know that all the city staff seem to be really on board with all this. And we're so happy. Okay, if there's nothing else, then, Betsy, please.
After pondering the Eco 100, I would support.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. We'll have time to talk about it. All right, so if there's nothing else, we will adjourn 10 minutes early.
We got